Thanks for tuning in to the World XP podcast. If you're enjoying the content, please drop us up, drop a like, and let us know your thoughts below in the comments. Also, please consider supporting our podcast via the link below. It really helps us out. He's back, the most tenured guest on the show. What an honor. The prestigious World XP podcast. How you doing, man?
Good. Happy to be back.
Yes, sir.
It's my favorite show to go on.
Happy New Year, man. Happy New Year.
Yeah, same to you.
So, obviously, for those listening who listen more than once a year, we skipped last week because holidays and stuff, and people were busy, and also I needed a break. But I figured that we would come back with probably the guest that we talk about the most fun things. So, had to make it happen. And I think today we'll start with this guy named Brigham Bueller. Went on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he basically railed against the health insurance industry, and that was interesting to me. Well, very eye-opening. So, with that said, Chris, obviously, for those who haven't paid any attention to the last 17 episodes that he's done, kind of is, I'll say, adjacent to that. I don't know. Is that the right word?
Yeah, sure. I work for a small biotech firm up here where we work on cancer drugs, right? That's our...
Yeah, it's a good synopsis.
Yeah.
So he's familiar with the FDA, which this guy talked a lot about, and a few other things. So I don't know. You listen to it, so let's just open it up and start and go. And what are your thoughts on the episode, I guess, that he did, or just the subject matter generally?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting, right? I think the important distinction for people to note that he says right off the bat is that he's talking about these natural peptides, right? That he's compounding in his pharmacy, and that I think he would make the claim that they should be regulated more like a supplement, right? And not like a drug, a traditional drug.
What is a peptide for those? I've heard the term thrown around, and like I get it kind of, but for those listening who don't know, and also me who also doesn't know.
Yeah, sure. So they're so your cells are made out of proteins and lipids and some other things. But for the purposes of our discussion, proteins are a major component of your cells, right? And they are made up of these building blocks called amino acids. So any short chain of amino acids is a peptide. So it's like it's if you were going to make a Lego tower of 50 Legos and you made one of 5, that would be a peptide, versus a whole protein would be the 50 Lego tower, right? Where each Lego is an amino acid. So a peptide is just a small, a minor building block. In biology, there's a number of peptides that have signaling characteristics, right? So they're not just a piece of the tower you were trying to build, but they also are used in their own communication, sending, growth signals, or, come here signals, or go away signal, all sorts of signals to different parts of your body.
So he's saying, I guess the FDA is trying to ban some. So I don't understand why. Well, I guess you were going to get into this, but then that doesn't make any sense. So if a supplement like creatine, for example, is creatine not is it a peptide or is it not a peptide?
I don't know off the top of my head.
So I guess creatine is produced in very small amounts by the body anyway, so it's like a naturally occurring thing. And so peptides also, by your definition and my understanding, are also naturally occurring. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean they can be, right? That like it's more of a general definition, like you could make a not natural peptide. It's really just standing in for a small sequence of building blocks, right? So your body makes a whole bunch of them. I could make a not natural one in the lab. It would just, both of them would be peptides. But in his case, I think he's synthesizing peptides that are naturally found in the body. So for the purposes of this discussion, that's what he's doing.
Okay, so that doesn't make any sense to me why it would be regulated then. So which is his thing, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple notes in his appearance on Rogan that one of his big points, right, is that since it's naturally occurring, it's safe, right? And that That I would push back on, right? Like there's lots of things that are naturally occurring that are not safe when dosed inappropriately or put in the wrong spot, right? If you give too much testosterone, testosterone's natural, but if you give too much, it has side effects, right?
Hmm.
Similarly, a lot of early immunotherapies in the clinic, they get flagged for overactivating your immune system, right? But it's not the drug itself that's dangerous, it's what your immune system does with it. So it's making a bunch of natural proteins that put you into more multi-system organ failure. So like just because it's natural doesn't mean it's safe.
Okay,
Um,
fair. Yeah, yeah.
but I think in his case, right, he does have a variety of studies. He's got some data to back it up. So I think that yeah, more theoretically, I wouldn't agree that just because it's normal or natural, it's safe. But it sounds like he's got data to back it up, right? So
Right. So I guess so he goes into that, and then this is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you specifically about is because I don't understand. So like he threw a bunch of scientific terms out there that I understand. Like I have heard them before because of talking with you and Katie and Tom and stuff. But to somebody who's listening, all I got from that was a complete just like negative view of everything, and obviously it's biased, obviously, because it's him telling his side of the story.
sure.
But I guess I don't understand where this peptide term I've only started to hear it recently, and I don't get like what is the craze I get or like how did it end up becoming part of the lexicon and like where what is one that people would just know like as another name as like if it's a supplement or like where would
Mhm.
people know it from?
Well, I think that new weight loss
Ozempic?
craze. Oh, yeah, I think that's a peptide,
Oh, so that one's not
right? It's
banned. So
no. So and I think he does. I mean, he does state somewhere that his aren't banned, right? They're just on a dangerous list, right? So they discussed
well, I
that.
mean, well, for all intents and purposes, that's banned because he also goes into doctors don't because they're seeing so many patients and if they're running their own practice, they have no time to do all the research and stuff to see what's good and what's not good, and so they just go off the
Yeah,
lists that are given to them. So for all intents and purposes, being on a dangerous list is banned,
yeah.
like in all practicality. So, but how or I guess I don't even know what I'm asking. So I don't understand the science, and I get his point, but I have no scientific knowledge. Like, so I hear him talk, and I'm like, okay, makes sense, cool.
Mhm.
And then already you've said, well, just because it's naturally occurring doesn't mean it's not dangerous. Also cool, good with both of those. Both of those make sense. So like, what's the situation, and why are his on the dangerous list aside from like, is there any scientific basis for that, or is it everything that he said? Because everything that he
Mhm.
said paints a pretty bleak picture of um the healthcare situation. And before people start running around saying, see, the US healthcare system is not good, like that doesn't make all the other ones better either. So they all suck.
Yeah, I mean it's yeah, I mean I think I felt like his assessment of the insurance, like the insurance, pharmacy, doctor like triad, and it's the issues that come out of that was pretty accurate, right? So like if you're, it's we health insurance is the only thing that we treat as not insurance, right? Your homeowner's insurance doesn't cover like changing out the windows on the house,
Yeah.
or your auto insurance doesn't cover changing your brake pads, right? Like it's there for it's insurance for catastrophe, right? Our health insurance is way more like a managed payment care plan, like he calls it, right? Like it's supposed to cover everything. It covers your Tylenol, it covers birth control, it covers Viagra, it covers everything, right? In some format or another. But that's not an insurance plan. That's like that's a dining plan at Disney, right? Like
Yeah.
it's priced accordingly.
Well, I wondered about that when I got off my parents' plan because I was like, I don't. go to the doc. Like, why do I'm going to end up paying more in insurance than I would have if I just did my FSA or whatever
Yeah.
generally. And so for me, it's not that much, I guess. And I did have a procedure this year that it was very useful for. But aside from that, if I had just been paying for the insurance like catastrophe part, it would have been useful.
Mhm.
But for everything else, like I don't know. Granted, disclaimer, I am healthy and I'm young and whatever. So
Sure. Yeah.
other
Yeah.
other people, right? But also then you get to this thing where it's like, why is that stuff so expensive in the first place? Like, why, if you go
Hmm.
see a doctor for 3 seconds, is it $2,000 or whatever
Yeah.
number it is? Part of it is because if you just think of an hourly rate and what it costs to buy all the equipment and rent out the space and what the doctor's hourly rate would be like if you were to divide it into his skill set and expertise, like it's expensive to go see a
Hmm.
doctor. It would be anyways because I don't know, like I charge a certain amount to be a like soccer trainer,
Yeah.
and doctor is worth his time is based on the world we live in worth more than that. So like I get a certain amount of it, but then it's like, why am I paying? He mentioned like $14,000 for some treatment, and I'm like, why? And
Yeah.
you've mentioned that on previous ones, like this dose actually costs only 2 cents to make. Like insulin, for example, it
Yeah.
costs like 2 cents to make a dose, but somehow it's fifty
Yeah.
dollars or whatever the numbers are. Um,
Yeah.
don't come at me in the comments about these numbers. I'm making them up for the purposes of showing an example. But yeah, so I don't like I don't know. I'm just spitballing stuff here. And
Yeah.
you being more familiar and also you having kids that you would need to go buy drugs for or medicines for and other
Oh
things.
yeah.
So your
Yeah.
situation is loads different than mine. I have very little experience with it. I just swipe the card or whatever and give them my number and I leave it alone for the most part.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, I see sort of there's two angles that are driving, two big ones that drive price inflation in this arena, right? So the one is on the R&D side, right? It's something like 97% of drugs fail,
we've
right?
talked about
So
that before, yeah.
the 3% that make it have to pay for all the failed research, right? You still have to pay the researchers and pay for the clinical trial and pay for all the animals and pay for all the reagents. All that stuff adds up. And so the successes have to carry the rest of the research, budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
But on the other one, I think that the truth be told probably drives it more is that it's just a disconnect of pricing from customers, right? Like yeah, so even in the episode he talks about it, right? So he says, it cost me $300 to synthesize this. I know the insurance company is only going to give me 30%. I need to make over 300 to break even, so I charge 1,000, right? Because I know they're going to cut me at 30%, and so that's how I'm going to get my 300, right? And so there's this weird like dance going on of how much the pharmacy and the doctor actually need to make money and how much they think they're going to get paid from the insurance company, and they're trying to guess or use some of their like arbitration stuff to guess how much they're going to get reimbursed, and so they inflate the costs so that they get the right amount back, right? But that just leads to this constant cycle of them inflating the price a little more. The insurance company cuts the percent they're gonna give back, right? So then you inflate the price a little more. Now I'm only going to get 20%. Okay, so now I need to charge $1,200 so that I can get my 300 because it cost me 300 to make it, right? And so like you just
Yeah.
kind of cycle that. Like I feel like it's akin to like student loans, right? That cycle of there's this cycle of inflation without any normal downward pressure that would be applied by a normal price mechanism, right? So like if you just bought it from the pharmacy, you'd go, look, I'm giving you 350. That's it. And he goes, well, I'm going to charge 500. And then a certain number of people are going to stop buying, right? That's the normal dance. And
Yeah,
I
but you
think that's
can't.
what,
So somebody else said something like that where it's like if he just bought the drug without the insurance reimbursement, I don't know if it was him or somebody else, but he's like, I'm not allowed to tell them that I could sell this to you for, I think he was saying he was using 2, 4, and 8 as his, and he's like, so if the
yeah, sure.
insurance is going to give me $4 for this thing, I have to sell it for 8, but really I can buy it for 2 without the insurance. and so I
Yeah.
could sell it to her for 4, which would be half off the whatever.
Yeah.
He said, but he's not. He I forgot who it was. He's like, but I'm. He said he was like legally not allowed to tell her, which
Yeah.
would
Well, because
then give the downward pressure that you're talking about from the inflationary side. But it's like I don't know.
well, that's the in network versus out of network thing, right? So to
Oh, yes,
be in
yes.
network, you have to agree to a certain set of conditions, right? So like now, okay, I can take Kaiser Permanente because I'm in network. All of their, all their patients are going to come to me. That's how I'm going to get people in. But to be part of this network, I had to agree to a certain set of conditions. So, and I'm sure some of them are arbitration, right? Like that. So like rather than suing Kaiser Permanente, I probably agree to go to an arbitrator, right?
Yeah.
And that's how they get away with being like, oh, okay, well, I'll pay you when I pay you. I don't know. Like that kind of song and dance because they know the legal teeth aren't coming out. We're all going to end up at an arbitration anyway. And I think as a big pharmacy, I can probably outlast you, right? Just financially, I don't need the money. You need the money more than I need to give it to you. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's super weird because then you look at so the I'll pay you when I pay you is kind of akin to the rest of the financial system. I was talking with somebody the other day. I was trying to explain like nobody actually has any money. It's all just loaned in a big circle. Um,
yeah.
and it's really hard to wrap your head around, especially with like fractional reserve banking, where the banks only have whatever. I don't know what the percent is. And I tried to explain this on a solo episode, and I probably did a horrendous job. But like the banks only keep a certain percent of what they need, and they loan out the rest, and they make the money on interest, and that's how they are a business. Um,
Yeah.
but people, it's really hard to wrap your head around that. But then to go back to the healthcare stuff, so this guy's pharmacy is called Ways to Well, and
Mm-hmm.
he goes completely outside of the insurances, the insurance companies. And I was reminded of Mark Cuban's. Have you heard of Mark Cuban's thing? It's like I forgot what it's called, but he's basically selling drugs at their Mark Cuban pharmacy. Um, it's like cost plus drug company. Yeah. So basically, what he
Mm-hmm.
does is like he's he has the formulas for all these drugs that are no longer at patents
Yep.
because you can make generics, and he's just making them at super low cost, but he's selling them for what they cost to make. So like on the insulin model that we talked about before, if it costs $2 to make or 2 cents or whatever to make insulin, he's selling it for $1 rather than 50. Um, and
Yeah.
this Brigham Bueller guy, his thing and Cuban's thing are I don't know if they're and then there's another thing called he sponsor it's like crowdfunded health.
Yes.
I forgot.
No, not yeah. Yes, I know
Yeah.
what you're talking about though.
Let me look. I
Crowd
don't want to say
health.
them crowdfunded health. I don't want to not give them credit in case somebody important is listening. I don't know. Crowd health. Yeah, I think that is that the one.
Is it crowd health?
Yeah, my yeah, I think so. Um, but in any event, so these are also outside of the like the normal um medical insurance industry. And that's strange
Mm-hmm.
to me because so if they lose, so a lot of people, or most people, I would say, get insurance through their employers. And so
Yep.
they don't think about it because it just comes out of their paycheck. I feel like that's a fair statement. But if you really did your research and declined all of the normal health insurance and you went with crowd health or and
Mm-hmm.
you got your medicine from Cuban's thing or you got treatments from this Ways to Well guy. I wonder what the like how much it would
Yeah.
be to do
How the
that.
price would come out.
Yeah, and I wonder if they are creating enough of a disruption to make the insurance people have to rethink or like remodel what they're doing a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't know. I mean, I would hope so, right? But I mean, I'm thinking about the patient population that leans most heavily on their healthcare at the moment are boomers and above, right? And they will be afraid to go outside of an institution,
Well, I'm
right?
saying
That's
in 15 years after
yeah,
most of
maybe
them have
yeah,
passed, then what's the situation going to be? Because
yeah,
a lot of people, well, I say a lot of people, I don't know, this is anecdotal, but there are people that I know who trust me and like wouldn't lie to me who are saying I'm not, if I don't have to go to my PCP, I'm my primary care, I'm not going. I'd rather find another solution. I don't think they are either
yeah,
misdiagnosing me or they don't listen to me, or I'm going to try and do my own research and cut this out of my diet or add this to my diet or add more of
yeah,
this vitamin or do, and I know people that are doing that that are my age, and I wonder if in 15 years or something we're going to see a shift in that. And it's kind of similar to the legacy media, like the corporate media that we'll get to later, but their
yeah,
audience is the same group that you just mentioned, and a lot of
yep,
people our age are like you guys are full of crap. So it feels
yeah.
very
That's
strange.
fair. I mean, I'm with you. I think a lot more people I know are kind of into biohacking in one way or another, right? Whether it's dieting or introducing supplements or cold plunges or, other kind of, like you said, out of the box thinking. So yeah, maybe. And I mean, that gives me hope because I do think there's a very weird managed care aspect to this whole thing that like I've got a good story of this actually with one of the kids where um, we were traveling, and so one of my kids, the youngest one, was really prone to ear infections for a while, right? And she ended up needing ear tubes, and that all worked out fine. But before that, we were traveling, and she got what was clearly an ear infection, and she got them, every like 2 months or so for a while. So it was pretty clear. We knew what it was, right? Like it was so it was a matter of getting a prescription written for an antibiotic so that she could be not in pain anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I go into we were traveling, like I said, so we weren't near her pediatrician who kind of knew the situation. So we went to we went to an urgent care down where we were, and she was not happy with the situation, right? Like she hadn't slept well, and was clearly in pain, right? She didn't have a fever or anything yet, but it was pretty clear what was coming. And so we waited an hour in the back of the urgent care. And basically, like I said, I was like, I know what I need. I need you to write on a piece of paper, or now it's electronic. I need you to press a couple buttons so that I can go to the CVS and get amoxicillin. Like that's what I need amoxicillin. That's
Yeah.
so all of this is just to get there. And so I go in, and she had just reached a stranger danger phase of kids, which is always fun. So the doctor comes in, she's wearing a mask. She wants nothing to do with this person. Like she's screaming bloody murder. She's trying to crawl on top of me to try and get to my back. I don't know what the plan was, but she is just having nothing to do with it. She's screaming bloody murder. And this guy is just insistent that he needs to A, listen to her lungs, and B, get a pulse. And I was like, I mean, she's screaming her brains out. You can't listen to her lungs right now. What are you going to hear? It's just going to like, it's not like she's going to take a deep breath for you. You're
No.
you're not going to hear anything. And he was like, well, I need a pulse to know that it's not elevated. And I was like, it is elevated. She's freaking out. She's having a panic attack. Her pulse is definitely elevated right now.
Yeah.
Please, I'm just going to pin her down. Can you peek in her ear and see if it's inflamed or not? And then we can get this song and dance over. And he wouldn't do it for like half an hour. He was like, we take a pulse. It was elevated. He was worried. It could be something else. I'm like, it's not something else. She's losing her mind in front of you. But before he could go through the system, he had to check the box. And the box said pulse, oxygen reading, listen to lungs, right? And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, you're not a doctor. You're like, you're worse than an AI chatbot, right?
Yeah.
Like this is ridiculous. Like we all know what we're doing here, but he had to check the box so that we could go through the process, even though it didn't make any sense. Like what's a pulse on somebody who's having a panic attack going to tell you? you know,
Nothing, but it's the
uh,
legal thing, right? If they have a high pulse and the whatever they prescribe, then give.
yeah,
But like that still is that still is almost nonsense. Like just let me sign a waiver
yeah.
then, or
Hmm.
whatever. Yeah, that's insane. It's
But
insane.
getting back to the point, right? It was managed. The care was not being managed by the doctor. It was being managed by the system that the doctor was in. He was just a stand-in for the computer program that demanded an O2 reading and demanded a pulse, right? Like it, you
Yeah.
know.
And
So, and
that's
you,
bonkers
yeah,
to me that they go to school for so long to do that. Right at this point,
yeah,
right? Some that's a gross generalization, obviously. Um, but also there's a lot of truth to that, and that to me is it's like, dude, it's like I just so this is just the whole system. So you're gonna go in debt to go to undergrad, and then you're gonna go in a lot more debt to go to med school because you want to help people, and then you're just gonna be basically an AI chat bot for some insurance system just so you can pay back the gazillions of loans that you did. Like the whole thing is nonsense.
yeah,
The whole thing is nonsense. And I've said I mentioned this to somebody about the university system. It's like the only like most people know it's bonkers at this point, and people are shifting away from it. And the same is with
yeah,
insurance. But the problem is you can't not go to medical school. Like I can't just say I'm a doctor, right? The medical
yeah,
school does
yeah,
it give you the piece of paper that's like, okay, you're gonna like do things to my body. You at least
yeah,
know what you're talking about, and so there's a monopoly on it. Um,
yeah.
and I think I mentioned this in a text to you. All of those old or like legacy traditional institutions are in the same
Hmm.
boat. Media, health stuff, universities, they're all in the same boat where they're having their monopoly like loosened a little bit.
Hmm.
And while hopefully the transition happens for all of those, we're going to be in a bit of a wild west type phase where if you want to go to like
Yeah,
this ways to well guy, like how do you know that this Brigham Bueller guy? I mean, I'm sure he's got all the papers and whatever else from he went to this school and that school.
sure, yeah, yeah,
But like you're going to start going to these people to say, oh, I want to get out of the system, right? Me and you are still in the system
yeah,
because we kind of have to be at the moment. The amount of research that it's going to take to truly like get out of it is almost not worth the time, which is part of the
yeah,
problem. But it's if you want to do it, you have to spend the time because there's going to be people that are like, I'm a doctor, I'll sell you this thing, and it's actually a sugar pill, and they just scammed you for $100 or whatever. And so
yeah,
that's going to be a really people are going to have to take I think a lot of personal responsibility is going to have to be like people I feel like need to be really really ready for whatever's coming. Like I don't envy a kid who's 10 now running into this in 15 years when all the adults have no clue what's going on because this is all new for them too and everybody's just figuring it out at the same time. Like this is going to be a really like a lot of people are going to it's going to be crazy, I think.
yeah.
Um
But I do
so
think, I mean, I think it'll, at the very least, what I hope is that it'll fall into a similar model to other stuff, right? Like, how do you find a plumber? Right? It's not like I really know how to check plumber credentials.
no.
I look around, I ask a couple people, I go across the street, hey, you got a good plumber? No, I mean, right, like I ask around,
Yeah,
some reputation develops, and then you call somebody, right? And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I think for like PCP level stuff, that's probably a decent model, right? Like, oh yeah, I got a doctor. He's great. He helped me with this thing. Or no, I've been working with this guy for 6 months. I've made no progress. This is ridiculous. I'm out. Right. And I'm
or
going to
I
tell everybody
feel
else.
or I feel loads worse.
Right. So like that's where I sort of hope, at least for the basic stuff. And I know a number of clinics too have been moving a little bit towards that model, right? So like
You called it
you're
a
even in the
cash model,
system.
right?
Well, sorry, I'll take a step back. A slightly different model, which is they'll have this is still within the system, but they'll have you and a number of people paired with like a doctor and then a physician assistant combo, right? And so most of the time you'll see the physician assistant, right? That's kind of how you'll. And then if something needs to kind of get escalated, then you'll go to your doctor, or you'll see a
Well,
doctor.
that's fine.
Yeah. but I think it's that kind of thing of moving a little bit away from the overwhelming credentialing of like, hey, to do kind of normal day-to-day stuff, you probably don't need the full credentialing degree system to take some blood pressure, to, like to kind of do some basic things.
Yeah.
So I hope that's a sign of things to come.
I think so too. Like I went to during COVID, I went to the same urgent care where I used to live, and it's the only
Hmm.
one. There's a I don't know. It's the only one in Fredericksburg. I think there's um maybe 10 or 12 of them. So it's not like a patient first or a big one. And it was kind of a
Hmm.
little bit out of the way. Um, and once your stuff is in the system, then they kind of like they know they're a bit familiar with you, and the prices were super reasonable, and I could pay with the I don't mind the FSA system where you put tax-free money on a card and you can swipe the card and at least it's tax-free, and then it kind of and you
Hmm.
can choose how much you want to put on it. Um
Hmm.
and but you have to pay a certain amount out of pocket before insurance kicks in or whatever. So it's like, I mean, it's not great, but point being, the
Hmm.
prices there were so much cheaper, and I could still, because it's still FSA eligible, but they weren't doing the whole like insurance song and dance. It was just like, here you go, here's your medicine for $8. Go. And I was like, oh,
Yep.
that's very nice. So I kept going back. And people were like,
Yeah.
oh, who's your PCP or whatever? And I was like, no, I don't have one.
Yeah.
So that was nice, but same, I don't know. I feel like I got very lucky with that. Um,
Yeah.
I found out about them because it was it was like the very height of the pandemic, and people were like, "Oh, you need to get tested before you go see grandma or whatever." And they had
Yeah,
an
sure.
opening. They were the only ones with an opening that day because I procrastinated, of course. Um, and then I was like, "Oh, this actually worked out quite nicely. These people are not treating me like I'm an animal who's going to breathe on them, and then they're all going to die of COVID." So that was nice. And then I just kept going back. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
it's very very weird. I don't. I
I mean,
it's
I like his idea, right? I like the ways to well idea. I mean, I
oh, it's
will
great.
say, I think he overpromises a bit, but
Yeah,
I would
I
expect
agree.
that out of kind of anywhere, right? Like, I think when he was talking about all the tests he would run, I think a lot of those, I think there's kind of there's an aspect of the medical establishment where more data is always better, and I don't think that's true. So I think sometimes more data is just more paperwork. And so like even when he was talking about like, oh, we're gonna do all these things, right? We're gonna do a gut microbiome check and we're gonna do this, and and I was like, I just don't even know what you would do with that information, even if you got it, right? Like it's a 23andMe kind of test. I guess you're
It
part
is.
Scandinavian. Well,
Well,
the gut micro. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, well, he was saying kind of then he could see like to the biohacking point, like they could, instead of just giving you a medicine, they could say, hey, you're probably feeling like your body's inflamed because you're actually kind of allergic to this thing. So
Mhm.
stop eating this thing, and then you won't need the medicine. Um,
Yeah. So I mean, but that's not a microbiome thing, right? That's a blood test kind of thing. So
no,
so like some
well,
of it's
he said that too, but
yeah. Yeah. So I will say I do think there's definitely something to having out of the box tests. I just think there was an aspect of that was an upsell where I was like, I just don't, even if you got those results, I don't know what you do with them. And
that's
maybe,
fair.
to be fair, maybe he knows. Maybe there are tests I don't know about. It's not exactly my arena,
Yeah,
but I think there's been a number of pitfalls for the field in general. Like for a while, genetics was going to solve all medicine, and then it turned out that that's probably not going to work. So like for probably this is like a inside baseball thing, but for a while, actually it was pushed a lot by Francis Collins, who's the NIH director. But the idea was that you
still.
would I don't maybe? I'm not sure. At
Hold on,
least former.
I'm googling this right now because that
Reese,
person is bananas.
yeah, I'm not sure if he currently is, but at least was in the last couple of years. Right? Like he was during COVID. I don't know if he's turned over since then.
Um. Oh, speaking of Francis Collins, I see a hold on. keep going with what you're
Oh, okay.
with what you're about to say.
So here's what was happening 10 years ago, right? Which was uh maybe 15 years ago now. Basically, there was this idea that you could genetic sequencing was coming onto the market in a way that was now accessible to lots of people. So for a while, it was super expensive. It was a super high technical technique, or technical skills required, technical lab equipment required. It really couldn't be done in a lot of places. So it started to scale in a way that you could get it for cheap. It could be done quickly, cheap. It could be done in a lot of places. It became more of a basic technique. And so there was this belief that all of a sudden we were just going to start genetic sequencing everybody and all their tumors, and you were going to find the mutation and you were going to cure everybody and everything was going to be fine and everything was going to be genetics. And so the whole field went chasing this white rabbit of genetic testing of various things. And then it turned out that really most of that's a flop. There's a handful of hits, but
Can I ask
most of
why?
that is.
Can I ask why that like? So obviously I don't understand the science, but just listening to it, that doesn't sound like it would work. For
Yeah, I mean,
from what does your genetics have to do? If you have a tumor, isn't that just the cells kind of attacking each other, and whether it's the immune system or inflammation or crazy inflammation or something else, what does
mhm.
genetics have to do with that?
I mean, I think the idea was that you could sequence people's cancer and find vulnerabilities that had been introduced by the mutations. So cancers tend to mutate a lot more than a normal cell, right? That's kind of how they
Sure.
got there. And so the idea was that you could individually tailor each patient's treatment to their cancer by looking for vulnerabilities that had been introduced while the cancer was growing. And in some cases, that is true. There are targets that the cancer picks up that are then druggable targets, right? So they lose a protein or they gain a protein, and now you can attack that angle with a drug.
So when you talk about protein, like a spike protein type thing is one that we heard a lot during COVID. Is that what kind of thing you're talking about
Yeah, like
ish?
that.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of them fall into this category of they are proteins that make the cancer a cancer, right? So they're a driver mutation that make it go from
Like
a normal
a
cell.
marker.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
it's a BRCA2 or a HER2 or a let's see, there's a couple other ones that people know, BRAF. So there's a number of things that people who are in the arena or patients may have heard. And basically those are mutations that are the cancer can't lose. If it loses it, it's not cancer anymore. Right. And so you can now attack that angle knowing that it can't give up that position. Right. So if you can fix that, then you have a chance at treating the patient. The problem is in those cases, and this is what genetics ran into it a lot, is that the cancer is a dynamic process, right? So it eventually, for most of those inhibitor kind of treatments, it eventually finds a way around it. It just takes a while. So you buy yourself some time, but you're probably not going to cure anybody with it.
Hmm.
Um, and so, but yeah, that was the thing, right? It was genetics, and the reason that this brought to mind is the new thing in the arena is the microbiome. The microbiome is going to solve everything. It impacts everything. It does everything. So when somebody says I'm going to do a gut microbiome check, in my head, a used car salesman flag goes up. Where I'm like, wait a second. I don't know any action you can take with that data that I've seen that's convincing
What would it show
for
you?
most people.
What types of things would it show you?
It would show you what the bacterial breakdown in your gut is, right? So all of us have, on board various bacteria.
Hmm.
Um, and in different locations, the subspecies are different, right? So based on your diet, you can change which bacteria, right? Because the bacteria are just eating whatever you're eating. So
Right.
you change your diet, you can starve out certain ones or support other ones, right? There's the probiotics too, right? Yogurt has good bacteria or it has good yeast. So, or good bacteria, right? And so you can colonize your gut with the good bacteria. I just don't know any health outcomes that people have found where they go, okay, you have bacteria X. We need to get rid of bacteria X. I
Would
guess there's one,
would
but
those be indicators of um would the bacteria be indicators of potential like inflammations or anything like that? Like if you've got a bunch of like uh, I guess the analogy I can use is like if you've got a bunch of was it white blood cells are the ones that attack?
Yeah,
If you got a bunch of like white blood cells somewhere, then you probably got an infection or something like that. Is that a
yeah,
potential thing that they're looking for maybe, or is that like kind of
yeah. It's definitely plausible. I think you could just get there by, hey, do you feel bloated? Or like I think you could get there a
hmm,
different way. And like I said, I'm just not sure the readout is going to come out that your biome is made up of 50% this bacteria and 47% that and 3% this. And I don't know that we know what the optimal ratios are. I don't know which way to try and move the needle, even if you tell me where it's at.
oh, that
Um,
that's fair. Well, I guess if it's relatively new, I guess we're finding out kind of not to.
mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. But so then I guess I would want that done in sort of an academic lab that's doing research and not so much paying for it in my clinic. Right. That
Oh,
would
that's
be,
fair. That's fair.
that's my point. Is that like, yeah.
All right. So Francis Collins, he said, so I don't know when this article, so I just typed in NIH director, and this article is from, what's today? Thursday. So this article is from yesterday, and it says Francis Collins said, "We weren't really considering the consequences of extreme home measures such as business shutdowns, school closures, and stay-at-home orders." And he could, and
Oh, yeah.
I guess these comments were last summer, or yeah, last summer. He confessed that the public health people made a really unfortunate mistake by ignoring the devastating side effects of the intervention that they believed were, um, yeah. Anyways, well, no shit,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah. I mean, all of health interventions is always a benefits versus risk ratio. And if you artificially put the risk at zero, then
Yeah.
everything comes out right. That's like
Well, you know what's crazy to me is all these people can come out and be like, "Oops, we messed up," but it doesn't matter. People's lives were ruined already. So
yeah.
it's like, nice. You did a bunch of stuff. You said that Rogan was taking horse medicine and you pushed all these vaccines and whatever else. And now you just get to be like, oh, sorry, guys. Like, that to me is not good enough. And nobody's going to go to jail and nobody's going to do anything. Like, this
I
is
mean, nobody's
super,
even gonna get fired. But
no,
even
like,
like right, like yeah,
nobody.
that's
And this is super anecdotal, but I've heard people say, oh, I've heard more people say my kid has pneumonia in the last month than
mm,
ever. Like
yeah.
pneumonia used to be in a kid. I I can recall two times because when I was a kid about somebody having pneumonia because I was like, oh, that's serious. Like you read in books about colonial days or whatever that people die of that,
Yeah,
right?
it's the
But so
consumption.
but it was like a note. It was like a noted like, oh, pneumonia is serious. I've heard so many people and people are saying, well, because the heart's doing this and side effects from this and that, and we'll never know. And part of me like really like I didn't take any
Mhm.
boosters, but part of me really regrets taking the first because I it let me go, it let me travel one place that I
Yeah,
wanted to travel, and it was good, and it was like whatever, had a good time, but not worth. I I don't know.
yeah,
I so I and but again, like I don't know. You've heard people go to like the if you just like Google died suddenly or whatever.
yeah, sure.
It's a little bit kind of it makes me nervous, and I don't. And so what? Fauci's gonna say sorry.
Yeah.
Nice,
Well,
thanks,
even
dude.
I don't remember if it was Moderna or Pfizer. I think it's Pfizer. Somebody's on the hook. They're supposed to do a subclinical myocarditis study in adolescent males.
Ooh, are they really?
That Yeah, but they've been slow rolling it. Like it was supposed to come out,
Of
I
course they
think like a
have.
year ago.
Was it
Um,
clinical trial?
yes. Yeah, I think it's a yeah, search like Pfizer trial subclinical myocarditis study or something.
How do you
There's a
how do you
it's
spell
supposed
myocarditis?
Myocardis.
Dude, it's not even coming up in the search bar.
Let's see.
Like that word is not coming up.
Oh,
Oh, there
that's
it
weird.
is. There it is. It wasn't coming up after the words clinical trial, which is bonkers. Also, the internet's out to get us all.
Right. Um, oh, I don't, but they were, it was part of their original agreement for their EUA, right?
What's
So,
EUA?
the emergency use authorization, right? So the authorization
Oh.
to use it was conditional on these follow-up studies, right? And so like this does happen. Um, like so this does happen in cancer too. Which is they have these scenarios where I forgot what it's called, accelerated approval. That's what it's called.
Hmm.
So you get a drug, it looks like it's working really well, and the FDA will say, listen, we don't want to wait like 6 years while a bunch of people die if you have this drug in your pocket that looks like it's working, right? And so
Yeah.
what we're going to do is if you have a good enough data package, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. We need the drug now. We're going to give you accelerated approval on the condition that you do the follow-up study, right? So like you're approved, you can sell the drug, you can give it to people, you're on the hook to do this study, right? From what I've heard, most of the time those follow-up studies kind of fall apart eventually. And
Well,
I
yeah,
don't know.
of course, because of what that guy was talking about, where it's like the CEO of this company will go to the FDA or vice versa, and they'll just move around, and then stuff just drops off, and
Yeah.
it's not
And that's
fun.
just,
It's not a good time, and then people wonder why people on the news or whatever are wondering why nobody trusts anything. Like
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe because the information is now readily available and you've gotten caught in a gazillion lies in the last 5 years. It's probably not a good look
Yeah.
for you. Um
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, here I got one. It was, yes. Uh, yes. So this was a post from somebody who follows regulatory affairs in July. And it was an FDA required subclinical myocarditis study of mRNA COVID boosters and more generally to holding the FDA accountable for timely follow-up of post-market study commitments. The problem for her was that the FDA denied her request to expedite the processing of her FOIA request about those. But basically, they were supposed to do a report. It got delayed sort of indefinitely to the best of my knowledge. And so now
Shocking.
she, as like a regulatory person, is following up down the trail and going, hey, where'd this thing go? Like you were supposed to do it, where'd it go? And then she's getting stonewalled on FOIA requests. So,
Shocking.
it's
I if it if it comes out, like if the report comes out and they find that it didn't have an increase or hardly any, is anyone actually going to believe it?
I don't know. I
So
mean,
so
well, actually, I think this. I think people who believe it now will believe it then, and people who don't believe it now won't believe it then. Right? That's.
Well,
I'm
I
not
get,
sure it'll
yeah,
move.
that's a fair point. It's not going to move the needle at all, I guess is what I'm saying. Like people, like I'm not going to sit here if it comes out and then be like, oh, well, I'm not worried anymore.
Yeah.
So I
I
don't.
mean,
It sucks, man. It
yeah.
sucks. Like I don't. Yeah,
I mean, I think it's been sort of fascinating to watch, right? Like you said, it's sort of a like it's institutional trust crumbling in real time, which is very odd to watch happen, right? Like I think it's in some ways fascinating, but it's also sort of scary to go, hey, what comes next? I don't know. But like to see these things happening in real time and to go, well, I was told something different, and now I'm with you. I don't know how people sort of rabbit hole their memory,
yeah.
but
That's what I was
like
saying earlier when I was like, it's going to be wild for a bit until we figure out whatever is coming next. Because that
yeah,
transition period, while some other system is building trust, it doesn't have everybody's
yeah,
trust yet, and the other one is losing all the trust. And so at some point, both whatever the new thing is and the old thing are going to be at like low for everything.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I thought,
and
I mean, a good. Oh, go ahead.
And just one other point that I wish I had considered. I heard some guy saying like at the beginning of COVID, he was like, "Well, if it's as deadly as they say, and it like if it kills us, like he's like a athlete, like early 30s or whatever. He's like, if it kills me, he was talking about him and his brother. It's like if it kills us, it's going to kill everybody. So we might as well just do whatever we want to do anyways." And I wish I had and like I wish I had had a little bit of that thoughts where not that I would have been reckless or anything, but with getting the shots and whatever else, I wish I had had a little bit because I pushed it a lot. Like I got it a lot later than a lot of
Hmm.
people. And I wish I just hadn't have. I wish I just would have waited another 3 4 months and then just been like, yeah, it's probably fine. But I
Well,
mean, it is what it
yeah,
is at this point. But
yeah, no, it's fair, and I think, I mean, there's sort of two points to that, right? So there was one, this was a tweet by Robert Califf like 2 or 3 days ago, right? So he's the is he head of the FDA? He's the FDA commissioner, right? And so it was about this preprint that had been put out with Pfizer as well, Pfizer members as part of the authors of this article, and the quote was amazing because the internet did what the internet does and like pointed out that this is ridiculous. But like I wrote down the quote because so it was talking about the most recent booster campaign, right? And it said,
how recent was that?
uh, which one, the quote or
The
the
booster campaign.
this fall, the last fall. So this is January, right? So like the most recent one that
So
came out.
3 months ago.
Yeah.
They're still doing that?
Oh yeah, yeah. They're still pushing it. I mean, no, mathematically nobody's getting it, right? Like it's
Okay,
5% of the population.
that's good.
But which I think again is like this is trust crumbling in real time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
This is but so he writes on X, importantly, those with previous vaccination but no updated vaccine appeared to be unprotected, end quote, right? And people were jokingly pointing out that it's a weird time when the FDA commissioner goes full anti-vax. Right, like I was like, because you're just stating outright that having, however, I don't even know how many shots were before this one. If you had them all, his claim was that you're unprotected, and so then you should get this next one.
No.
But like, and the funny thing was, he's misreading this paper, which is the funny part because he's like, his claim is that you're unprotected if you had all the previous shots, right? The only way
Therefore,
that
you need the new one.
Yes. The only problem is the only way you could ever make that comparison is you would have to find somebody who had never had COVID and had no shots. And I know none of those people. Everyone I know has had COVID,
Yeah,
all of them, right?
yeah, yeah.
And a mixture of them have had a mixture of a number of shots. There's no comparison group to unprotected, right? So who is this? Who are you even comparing to get this phrase? So like, it was just fascinating to watch. Like I said, it's been fascinating for me to watch people go, well, you have to get it and it's super safe and effective so that you can protect me. And I say, well, if it's effective, then why can't you just get it? And then you sort of see the wheels spin, right? Where I'm like, if it's effective, then why can't you just take it
Hmm.
and you can leave my 2-year-old alone?
Yeah,
Right? Like it's been weird to watch.
yeah.
But
Go ahead.
did you see Bill Maher and Seth Meyers? They're back
Was
and
it
forth on this.
McFarlane? Seth
Or was
MacFarlane?
McFarlane? Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah, yeah, I did. That is so for those listening, Chris, go ahead and summarize, but just Google Bill Maher, Seth MacFarlane COVID discussion or whatever, and I'm sure it'll pop up. I think was it like 6 minutes or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it was them. It was them talking on Club Random, right? Which is Bill Maher's kind of more fun podcast, which I enjoy. I don't know about you,
Hmm.
but I enjoy it from time to time. Um, and it was Seth MacFarlane kind of going all in, like as a cheerleader for the public health establishment and for vaccination, but and Bill Maher kind of taking the more skeptical position, which he's kind of developed over the last 2 years or so. But I will, I don't feel like Bill did a great job defending his points in the particular clip,
No, not
but
really.
it was interesting to watch. Like I said, like Seth MacFarlane kind of like poo-poo the idea of natural immunity, and then go, well, like, because he was like, well, I know everybody who's had it more than once, and I was like, the correct response to that of people who didn't get the shots have had COVID more than once, so you don't have any immunity. The correct response to that is, so did everybody who got the shots. Everybody got COVID. All of like everybody got it in the end,
Yeah.
right? I don't know about you. Do you know anybody who didn't get it? I don't know anyone who didn't get it.
My dad says he didn't get it, but I think that's just because he never got tested. So it's like if I didn't get tested, I don't have it. And I was like, I think you're lying.
Yeah,
Um, well, no, that's I mean that half a
like
joke, but
it's.
that's it though, really. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know anybody. It's everybody got it. So, but yeah, like you said, that's not the sales pitch that we were all given. Is
No.
that you'll get this and then you'll get COVID too? Which again, like getting to the myocarditis thing, we've talked about this before, kind of off air, but your choices aren't really shot or COVID. It's COVID or COVID and shot. Those are your
Yeah.
choices, right? Like you will get it again. The question is whether you've had a shot between now and then, but you'll
Yeah.
get it again.
That's why
That's
I wish I had waited and just got it and been like, oh, it's not so bad. Like, granted, I'm in a different like it was bad for other people, and
sure. Yeah.
that's fine. But for me, for me it would not have been bad, even if I
Yeah.
didn't have the. I can almost like bet the farm on that. Like, I think I would have been fine. Um, yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't know. I
Well,
don't know.
it's odd to watch. Like you said, it kind of leads into our other topic of discussion, right? Our usual
Hmm.
topic of like crumbling media of like even if so my position on these vaccines at this point, right, is that the booster buys you some protection for a limited amount of time, right?
Hmm.
So the limited amount of time is like a month or 2 months. You have some antibody based protection based on getting a booster, right? So with that math, I don't understand why you would do a yearly one for people who are high risk, right? Like even understanding that position, right? Like if your position was these people need protection, then they should be getting dosed every 3 months from September to May.
Yeah,
Like how does a one-off help them?
I mean, it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't. So,
It
I
doesn't, right? Like
just,
and it and you I mean like most respiratory viruses, you start your vaccine push in September, August, September. It's definitely worn off by January.
yeah.
Right?
You
Like
know,
that's
you know what else is interesting? A lot of people. So this happened. RFK starts running for president, um, and then and then he goes on Rogan and he talks about these kind of like vaccine injuries or whatever, and he's
Mhm.
suing these like with the mercury poisoning and whatever else. And I've also heard people say and been like being like, I'm not getting another vaccine ever again. And
Yeah.
so this whatever happened is and that's going to be a weird one for the next generation of people who lived through this and kind of were like, ooh, I don't know. And then like, okay, so does my kid have to get all 42 shots or whatever it is before I send them to school?
Right.
And that's going to be a super weird and so even if all of those worked, are we going to see something like polio come back? God forbid.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So like they did this
Yeah.
to them. They like what happened the days, the Pfizer's and all them basically have created this situation and maybe I don't know. I'm not gonna go as far as to say as on purpose, so they could go make a new thing for polio when it comes back or whatever. But they've created
Mhm.
this situation has been created now where like I maybe I shouldn't. It's fine. I've never gotten a flu shot,
Mhm.
but I've also never got the flu.
Yeah.
So why am I gonna start getting the flu shot, especially now? It's like I'm not.
Right. Yeah.
But then what if I get older and I really need it? Like, so like,
Yeah,
what do
I mean,
you
your math changes, right?
right? But what do you do with that? Then when you've got a whole new generation of kids that the parents are like are lived through this, and they're, I don't know if I want to
Yeah,
do that. It's like, maybe, right? People say, oh, like, the vaccines cause autism, whatever. I don't know, right? I don't know.
yeah, sure,
I'm not
yeah,
saying they do. YouTube, I love you. Don't take my video down. But what
yeah,
happened? What happens now to the next generation if enough people decide that they don't want to do that? Has smallpox been eradicated completely? Like, really
yeah,
completely? I don't. Well, I don't
right,
know. But I'm just saying, like, we could be in for we could be in for a world of hurt. And yeah, it's
yeah,
the watching the trust crumble real time
yeah,
is very interesting, and watching people's trust crumble, like watching people hit like the mark where it's like, oh, it was wrong the whole time. And then, like,
hmm,
it's like a month later for somebody else in a different story or whatever. It's been
right,
very, very strange and a little
yeah,
bit weird. And then watching people become super jaded like overnight has been,
yeah.
it's like, I didn't think, yeah, I've never been an adult before. Like, but but I didn't
Don't
think,
start now.
well, yeah, I mean, maybe that would be, I'll go to Neverland and live with Peter Pan. But I didn't think that this would be something that I would ever experience. Growing up,
Yeah,
be like, okay, yeah, the government, maybe they do some stuff wrong, but generally speaking, like, we vote for them and they're looking out for us. Maybe it's hard to look out for each individual, of course, but like, okay, I never thought we
hmm,
would be in this situation. Maybe that's naive of
yeah.
me, and maybe also because I've never been an adult. But it's like, it's very weird. It's very weird. I don't know.
Well, I think it's been, we've touched on this before in previous podcasts, but it's something that I love. The thing I love the most about sort of the X social media platform option, which is not much. I don't usually enjoy it, but what I do enjoy is the capacity to like fact check people in real time and to do it in a way that like is irrefutable,
Hmm.
right? And so like the president of Harvard resigns, right? Claudine Gay, she
Hmm.
resigns. She does the little tap dance at Congress about anti-Semitism.
That was ridiculous. If people haven't seen that, go Google that. That is absurd. Anyways, keep
Yes,
going.
that yeah. And it's funny because I think I re-listened to her comments, and in an attempt to read her in the kindest light, what I suspect she was trying to do was she was trying to avoid a trap that she tends to like, she has laid for people in the past, right? Which is to do a word bait and switch after the fact. So she's saying, whoever the congresswoman is saying, she's asking, does calling for Jewish genocide, is that a problem with like Harvard's bullying policy? Which probably should be a problem for any bullying like calling for genocide is probably outside the range of bullying,
Yeah, it's
generally speaking.
probably a bit of a problem. Yeah, you'd say.
Yes. But what I suspect she's thinking is the congresswoman has one thing in her head, what calling for genocide means, and the Harvard president has a different thing in her head. And so she's trying to avoid falling into the trap of, well, now you said that you can't call for genocide because that's against the bullying, but this person said there shouldn't be an Israeli state. So what does that mean? Right? And so like I suspect she's trying to avoid that bait and switch trap, right? Of defining the word genocide in a non-genocide way. But she's been doing it on other issues all the time, right? Like it is common parlance to call for other group genocide, but not actually be doing that, right? Like just say, hey, I think the marginal tax rate's a little high. Well, that's because you want all the poor people to die. Uh,
Sorry.
no, not exactly what I'm
Yeah.
going for, but like that kind of thing. So I think she was trying to avoid that. But what really takes her down is not so much that, it's that then people start realizing that she's a rampant plagiarist. And I feel like it's X that brought her down because it's just people posting under every post of hers or any people trying to defend her. It's on the left side, it's somebody's book or paper, and on the right side, it's what Claudine Gay wrote, and they've highlighted the words that are the same, and they're basically just lifting paragraphs out of stuff and not attributing it, right?
That is,
And so, like, it's irrefutable.
yeah,
Like,
dude. Twitter is or X is an amazing.
yeah. But like my hope is that it opens people's eyes at least to some angle, right? So like you see a New York Times article, it says Claudine Gay's resignation is due to racism. And then somebody posts under it, no, it's because she's a rampant plagiarist, right? Like here's
Yeah,
why. Ding ding.
yeah. Or well, even the like the community guidelines context thing now is
Yes.
really funny. Like we saw this video of Vivek Ramaswamy, who was a Washington Post reporter, asked him if he condemned white supremacism, to then he said no, or he said he didn't say no. He said I condemn racism of in every way. Basically, there's a clip. It's like 3 minutes. So then he tells the reporter that you're gonna put this on there, and you're gonna put the headline as Vivek refuses to condemn white supremacy, which of course she does. And then Twitter it says readers added context. This is a disingenuous framing of the exchange. He condemned all forms of racism, but refused to participate in a clear gotcha moment by the journalist. Like that's like X added that under her post, and it's like, oh, that's amazing, man. That's amazing.
It's
It's
such a
so
good
good.
takedown.
Yeah, it's
But I mean,
Well,
I appreciate it. I mean, even like the other thing we're touching on was the Epstein files getting released, right? And I saw a
mhm.
couple posts floating around X where I was like, that person did, and then under it is community notes. It just says, nope, that didn't happen. Great, thanks. We're like, okay, great, that was a made up post. Okay,
Yeah,
I
and the
can go on my
community
day.
notes is super helpful because it's like a compilation of like the most replies, which maybe sometimes is not always right. But then it's got its own like mechanism where you can say if it's helpful or not helpful or whatever. So
Mhm.
it's not perfect, but
No,
it
sure.
allows for moments like that where there's a coming together of like a he said she said situation, um, and then somebody will put up the whole video and it's clearly one way or the other way. Um, yeah, I think we're late enough in this. Well, I don't know. I think we're late enough in here that nobody's listening anymore that we can talk about Epstein. Did you? I couldn't find the actual list. Did you?
Yeah, I think
Did you look
so.
hard or not really?
I kind of went digging a little bit, but it looks like I was getting two stories, which I'm wondering if they're confused. So that some files got released,
Hmm.
but that there's more to come, right? And so,
Interesting.
like, there was some murmurs that there was a delay to the end of the month for some
Hmm.
file release. Um, and then some stuff came out. So I didn't know if that meant that the delay wasn't happening or the stuff that was coming out was not related to these delayed releases.
It said there was a list of like 140, and I found like 50. But
Yeah.
I didn't know. And then there was another one where it's like you had to scroll through and there's a paragraph about each person providing context or whatever. And I was like, I don't care about the context. I just want to look through the list for memes and jokes and whatever. Um, which I've found a few. But oh, also, did you see that on ESPN? Aaron Rodgers said that Jimmy Kimmel was going to be on Epstein's list.
Is that what happened?
Yes,
I saw
yeah,
that I saw that something flared up, but I didn't know what the
yeah.
deal
So
was.
Jimmy Kimmel responded on Twitter saying that he was going to sue Aaron Rodgers or whatever, which I find hilarious because Jimmy Kimmel spent 3 years pushing all the COVID nonsense, and
Yeah.
lying about Trump and whatever else. But as soon as somebody says something about him, that when you watch the clip of Aaron Rodgers say it, like he's like joking a bit, but like maybe not really. Um,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, so as soon as somebody says something you don't like, Jimmy, you're gonna threaten to sue him. Well, that's nice. I like I didn't really I didn't mind him before all this nonsense, but
Mhm.
now
Yeah, sure.
I really don't like him. Like that just I don't know.
The the relationship that fascinates me about Jimmy Kimmel is him and Adam Carolla going back in the 90s. And
Hmm.
now watching Adam Carolla, like they were buddies, right? Like
Hmm.
they were on the Man Show, and they, right, like, and now they're clearly on opposite sides of most issues. And I mean, I don't watch Kimmel, so I don't know if he's ever commented on it, but it's pretty clear that like Corolla doesn't want to talk about it. Like he just sort of, he just sort of like, I think he's trying to protect a friend kind of thing. Like he just doesn't want to engage on the topic. But it
Because
is fascinating to me.
Jimmy has no point to stand on. So if they engaged, it would be a bloodbath.
Yeah, but it
I
is
don't know.
fascinating for me to watch like Jimmy Kimmel try to take the moral high ground. When again, I'm like, I mean, I'm sure I can find some clips that are not okay, Jimmy. Not in
Loads,
2024, they're not.
loads.
Right.
Yeah, don't. Maybe you shouldn't do blackface, dude.
Right.
Um,
Like,
I'm surprised that didn't get him fired. With like when it came out, when it resurfaced, it was a very inflammatory time.
yeah.
Um, and he apologized and whatever else, but I'm surprised that more didn't come to him than
Yeah.
just the apology because it kind of as soon as it came up, it kind of went away. And I don't know if that's because he's part of the right, like there's the cool kids club and you're not in it or whatever Carlin said.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's
Yeah.
because of that, but that was a bit surprising that. But I mean, the memes are all over the internet. Same with Trudeau and whatever. Like
Yeah. Like,
Trudeau's his own piece of whatever he's doing. I people are not fans of him at in the slightest. What's your take on the Trump getting booted off the ballot in Colorado and Maine?
I mean, it seems totally made up, right? Like, I mean, I don't understand. I don't understand the math. Well, I think I do, but I think it's just politics, right? Like, I don't think there's any legal ground here. Though I will say, maybe this is my episode hot take, which is I could see the Supreme Court going one of two ways, right? So I guess there's only
Well,
two
I
ways they
mean,
could
there's
go.
only
But
two ways to go.
yes, but I could see this court making the two arguments, and I'm not. I lean towards they're going to make the "this is ridiculous" argument. You can't charge somebody with insurrection. You can't punish them for insurrection unless you're going to charge them for insurrection, right? Which is a real legally defined crime that you can charge somebody for, and nobody's done it. So if you're not going to charge him with insurrection, then you can't punish him for insurrection. That seems ridiculous to me. Like, that yeah, that's legal framework. So I could see them saying that, right? I could also see them saying, because they've ruled this way on a couple cases, it's a states' rights issue. I don't know. Parties are
Ooh.
private parties. I don't know. Do whatever you want. I don't care what you do in your Elks Club. Right.
Mm.
That's your jam. So that would be my hot take, is if it goes the other way, as I suspect that would be the argument, but I don't think that'll happen. But I could see them making that argument, going, we have no jurisdiction here. Who the state puts on their primary is a state issue. It's not a federal issue. The parties are not they're not federal apparatuses. They are private entities. So I don't get to tell you who's captain the cheerleading team, and I don't get to tell you who's on the ballot here.
Mm. I
I
don't
don't think
think.
they'll go that way.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, we'll see. If it does go that way, then things will get very, very interesting for um. But I don't. I mean, and then what happens with like I don't. I feel like Biden is not going to be on the ballot.
You don't
But
think so?
well, see, so I think people are more unhappy with him than they were with Trump at this point.
Yeah, the polls back that up, right?
I just get the feel like even people who I know are like, oh, I could never vote for Trump or I've never voted Republican or whatever. Those people are posting about how bad Biden is, and I'm like, so
Mm.
I don't. But I don't know. I just like I they haven't done anything. I mean, the only thing that they've done was they tried to Hunter Biden out in front of the Capitol to say, oh, that my dad wasn't involved and it was only me that spent $1 million on hookers or whatever he did.
Yeah.
And I'm allowed to do my own business whatever, blah 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 blah. But
Yeah.
so I don't maybe I like how could they can't do he cannot do a debate. I don't care who it is. Even if it's Nikki Haley, who I really hope it's not her because then we're going to war with everybody. Um, but Trump,
Hashtag Raytheon stock.
yeah. Although Shane Gillis had a good bit about Biden beating Trump in the debates because he's like, Trump tries to get in your head, dude, and he's like goes, good luck getting in Joe's head, dude.
I saw that.
Joe's not in there. Good luck,
Yeah.
dude.
He's the only kryptonite.
Yeah, but you can't like he can't talk. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I
I
don't
mean, I think they'll my guess is that they'll just not do debates. That'll just be it. They'll come up with some paper thin excuse to not do it.
Oh,
And
Trump's on the ballot. We're not going to debate a criminal.
yep, it'll be something like that. And then they're just gonna bet that people buy it because they're though that's their two options, right? Is chance implosion or
Or
chance maybe people will just
get rid of
roll it.
him, or they get rid of him. They're like, all right, look, Joe, pardon your son and get the hell out of here, and be like, oh, I'm due to health reasons, I'm not running, and something like that. Because the other thing is, it's
I mean,
like,
but and then
it's
do
like,
what, right? Run.
what do they do with Kamala? Because
Yeah, that's
she's more unlikable than almost all of them. I think the only person more unlikable than her is probably Hillary Clinton.
she is the best protection to President Biden is that
Yes,
she's standing there smiling
and so
and you
then
can't pass her up.
no,
You
you
couldn't,
can't
right?
because then they have to deal with the whole woman of color thing. And
Yeah.
then there's Newsom, who's just been sitting there saying, "Hey guys, I'm still here. Did you see me wipe the floor with Ron DeSantis? Even though none of my facts were correct, like none of my facts were facts."
Yeah.
And that was a weird one because Ron DeSantis seems like he's a smart dude, and he seems like he would not do a horrible job as president if he didn't have to talk to anyone.
Yeah.
But as soon as he has to talk to somebody or make a speech, you're like, "Oh, dude, come on."
Yeah.
And what's wild to me is that I don't understand. I mean, let me rephrase. I would pick Vivek 100% at this
I
point.
like Vivek. Yeah. I like
So,
Vivek.
but nobody knows about him. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day who's been Democrats or whatever. He's like, Biden doesn't seem like he's doing that well. And every time I see this Vivek guy, I seem to like what he has to say. We got into a whole discussion about it. He was like, I don't even know who Nikki Haley is. I was like, all right, well, don't. That's not a good. It's fine that you don't know who she is. Like, if you want to
Your life
know,
is better this way.
she's.
Yes.
But, um, and he's like I don't really like Trump, but I was doing better when Trump was here. He's just like
Yeah.
noticing. It's like you see the
Yeah.
wheels turning, and I'm sitting there. Told you, like
Yeah.
I didn't really
Yeah.
like him either, but
Yeah.
so that's been I that's in term but in terms of things are going to get wild, that's another one. Things are going to get wild because if it's Trump and Biden, whoever wins, the other side is going to be not very happy at
Yeah.
all.
I mean, I saw I don't remember who said this. I feel bad. Whoever said this, I'm sorry I didn't attribute it to you. But I heard somebody talking on a podcast and they said that it's now sort of set up for failure, right? Like the whole thing is set up for
Yep.
failure, right? Because if you're watching it really closely, if it's Trump v. Biden and Trump wins, the Biden people are going to go, he wasn't even supposed to be allowed to run. Look at all these states that tried to throw him off. He's an insurrectionist, right? So they're going to go, I don't accept these results. And if it's Biden, then all the Trump people are going to accept the results. So you've just primed it that no matter which way you spin, half the country goes, I don't believe this.
Yeah.
Like there's no winning. But it's just it's that scene out of Deadpool where he's going to run over the guy with the Zamboni. Like it's just a slow moving train wreck that
Yeah.
I don't think there's a way out. Like you said, I just don't. Short, I mean, I guess some health thing could happen, but short of that, I think it's Biden Trump. I think that's what's
Well,
happening.
yeah, and it's only going to be to Biden, man. Trump is running on McDonald's and no alcohol for 78 years or whatever, and dude
He's
looks like he's going on podcasts, he's playing golf. Dude, he's still, I
he's
mean,
made out of preservative at this point.
he really is, dude. I made a joke that he looks like a dusty Cheeto, that he's made of Cheetos and McDonald's. I mean, it's unbelievable, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, but dude, I don't even know. Oh, I forgot to do this at the beginning. So, I've been doing this thing where I ask every guest a question from the previous guest who doesn't know who the next guest is.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so I figured the last guest left me with two, and because you've been on a gazillion times, I figure you probably need a second one anyways. Um, so let me go find it real quick.
Am I gonna have to like come up with a question on the fly? Or do I
No,
get
no,
some
no. You
time to come up?
just no, you just text it to me later.
Okay,
Um,
good.
yeah, no, no, no. You don't have to say it live on. So you just text it after. Why can I not find? Did he send it here? Mustafa, you send me too many sports things. Just kidding. Love you, dude. Okay, he's got two. First one is what's something you wish you spent more time doing and why?
Oh, that's a good one. Um, this is one you'll appreciate, which is weightlifting. I was never into weightlifting as a kid. I hated it. It was my least favorite exercise. I would do cardio 10 out of 10 times before I would lift a weight. I've now gotten into it more recently and I feel great. Like, I think it's really, I mean, it's helped my mood. It helps, I feel better, right? Kind of both from a like physique perspective and also energy wise and just general physicality, which is great because like I don't sleep anymore with the kids and everything was starting to hurt. Like I'd reached that stage. So yeah, no, I wish I had gotten into it earlier, but better late than never.
Hell yeah, dude. That's awesome. It helps.
Yeah.
I cannot be a bigger advocate of resistance training, whether it's weights or resistance bands or body weight workouts or something that just isn't necessarily, but like strength and resistance training. I could not be a bigger advocate just for like long-term
Hmm.
health, mentally, physically, everything. Um,
Yeah. It
yeah,
clears my head way better than like cardio ever did.
yeah, yeah, because halfway
Right.
through you're hating yourself. But
Yeah,
well,
true.
some people are not, but no. The second one is if you had the opportunity to get a message across to a large group of people, what would your message be? And I feel like that's fitting because we have a large group of podcast listeners. Yeah,
Especially at this stage.
yeah, especially at this stage. There's probably I wonder who will be on. Man, maybe if I tell Mustafa that I asked the questions at the end. No, he'll probably just skip to the end. I would.
Hi,
I would.
Mustafa.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the second one.
Um, if I could get a message across to a lot of people, what would it be? Um, hmm, that's a tough one. I mean, I think it would be something to do with this isn't a this isn't exactly an answer to a question, but I wish people had a better understanding of how I feel personally that life is a series of systems. And that's how I understand the world around me is less about the people and more about the systems that they're placed in, right? And that helps me see things like conflict of interest or see things like this is a system that works and can protect consumers, or this is a thing like this idea will work out well, this idea will not work out well. And it's less dependent on the individual and more dependent on the framework that that person is being inserted into. Because I feel like an individual can buck a system, but over time, the system trumps the individual,
The
right?
house
Because there's
always
just
wins.
yeah, you're not going to have the one guy forever or the one girl forever in the position. You will start to select for somebody who's going to play ball in whatever system you've built, whether that's corporate America or whether it's, in your own family life, by not, stuff like that, like understanding that, listen, if we don't clear the dinner table, nobody's going to sit at the dinner table. It's not about me. It's not about the people here. If we don't make homework hour, the kids won't do homework. It's not about them. They're good kids. They're smart kids. I love them. They're great. It's that if you don't put the framework in place, it will all kind of fall apart. And I assess that on multiple levels, right? Of like, if you introduce this thing, whether it's legislation or a mental framework of, oppressor, oppressed, whatever the system is, Democrat, Republican, Congress as a general thing, I feel like people focus on the person and not the system. And so I wish people would look at life more that way and just say, listen, I think that our previous discussion is a great example. I know I take it. The vast majority of people I know do not want it to be Trump Biden. Why is it going to be Trump Biden then? Because the system has defined it that way, right? The system has been pushing this way for years. And I think it will end up that way because of various forces built into the cake, right? And it's less about those guys and, somebody behind the scenes pulling the strings like the Wizard of Oz than it is about the pressures baked into it. And so same thing of like, if you understand ballot requirements, right, and why various third parties have trouble getting votes, then you understand that there's a system pressure there that is trying to prevent them from getting that way. And so I think you can I feel I see the world clearer when I look at things that way.
Yeah, fair enough. That's a good answer. Feel like we've covered enough topics to get us both in trouble. Um,
Woo-hoo.
any last nickels?
No, thanks for doing it. It's always fun.
Yeah, 100%. All right, guys. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.